Good morning everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we'll be doing the 10 commandments of Ancestry.com. These are just a bunch of rules that I've put together that I think will help you if you are an Ancestry user. So number 1, thou shalt source thy work. So when you're adding names and dates and places, make sure that you make note of where you got your information from. If it's something that isn't linked to an Ancestry source, I usually just make note of it in the description box. That way you won't forget where you got your information from. And if you ever see any sources down the track that say anything different, you can always compare your sources and see which one you think is the better source. So your source, it might be official records, but it could also be something like a family Bible or letters, or it could even be just the word of like your grandmother or your uncle or somebody in your family. So even if it's somebody's word, just make sure that you make note of who told you. Number 2, thou shalt turn thy back on hints that are unsourced. So similar to the first commandment, be careful of hints on Ancestry that don't have clear sources. Okay, an Ancestry hint is not a source, and another user on Ancestry is also not a source. They're both avenues that are worth exploring, and definitely you can message other members and ask them for their source, or you could go and search on Ancestry to try to verify a hint. But hints from people or from Ancestry are not sources in and of themselves. Just be careful if you're chasing down sources for a hint that you don't get led astray chasing the wrong information. Don't force it to fit if there isn't any clear proof. Number 3, thou shalt not commit plagiarism. This one is probably my biggest pet peeve. I hate seeing when people have gone to somebody else's tree and they have downloaded their photos or documents and they have re-uploaded them to their own tree as if it's their own work. I don't think that most people are meaning to be rude or do anything wrong when they do this, but it's a huge no-no, not to mention possibly a copyright infringement. I personally got burned by this one years ago when I was new to Ancestry, when I was researching one of my ancestors and I went out to state archives and found an amazing letter that related to him. And I took a photograph of the letter. When I went home, I contacted another Ancestry user who'd done a lot of work on this ancestor, and I thought that he or she might have had some insight into what the letter meant. So I emailed it personally to them and they never emailed me back. They just uploaded the picture to their tree as if it was their work. Ever since then, heaps of people have shared the photo and somebody's even used it in a small booklet that they've done about the ancestor. So it really rubs me the wrong way every time I see my photo getting shared. And even though I don't have any real ownership of the letter, the fact that I was the one who went and dug it up and it was my photograph, they still should have sourced where they got it from, or at the very least just sent me a message and said, hey, could I please use that photo? And I would have said, yeah, sure. It was just rude the way that it was done. So I never really pursued it. I never really said anything, but I took it as a life lesson that I would be a bit more careful in what I shared online. But certainly never do that. Don't take other people's work and upload it as your own. Number 4, thou shalt link DNA tests to a tree. If you do a DNA test, please link it to your tree. Or if you don't have a tree, please make a tree. There are so many DNA test matches on Ancestry that aren't linked to trees, and it's so frustrating because they can really help you in building your tree or solving mysteries, or even breaking down brick walls and filling in blanks. Besides, if you've gone and gotten those tests, you might as well make the most of your results. You've paid heaps for them, so you've just found out the countries and regions that your ancestors were from, but you haven't even got the whole story. You could learn so much more about your ancestors, about their personal lives and what they did. Who cares about the countries, really? The countries are only really half the story. You might as well make the most of your results. Number 5, thou shalt not take personal photos of those whom thou art not closely related. This is another one that really bugs me. So some people just like fleshing out their tree to the fullest. And I understand that. It's really addictive adding branches and adding stories. But when people take it that far, it's when they've added not only their ancestors, but their ancestors' siblings and their ancestors' cousins and second cousins, and then they've gone all the way back down the tree and added all those descendants. So they come back down to the living generations, but these people are barely related to them. They might be like their 10th cousin or 20th cousin or something. So if this person's barely related to you, don't go and find somebody else's tree and add personal photos of that person. Like, this is somebody's parents or grandparents, and these are their personal family photos. If it's close to the living generation, if you're not closely related to them, you're better off just to leave that. So just be respectful and remember that these are people's personal memories and not just trophies to collect for your tree. Number 6, thou shan't forget thine shoebox. I am the most guilty of this one. So I find a hint and it's a fantastic hint, but I can't quite prove it. So I put it in the shoebox and think I'll go back to it later, but I never do. So if you're like me and you neglect the shoebox, you're better off either just don't use it at all, never add anything to shoebox, or maybe set yourself a reminder every 3 months or so to just go back and check the shoebox and see what you can discard or you can add into your tree, because otherwise you sort of end up doubling up on your work when you're researching something again and suddenly you go down this path and it says you've already added this to your shoebox and you think, I've just gone down this path twice and I didn't even know it. Number 7, thou shalt be polite and thankful in thy dealings with others. So just remember that other ancestry members don't really have to help you, and sometimes their help can be invaluable. So if somebody replies to your message and they share maybe personal stories or anecdotes or family legends that maybe have helped to your tree, then make sure you give them a big thank you. Number 8, thou shalt check that dates and locations make sense. I see this one so often on Ancestry. People have trees where their ancestor is like 11 years old and having a baby or getting married, or they're in a census in Australia and then suddenly the next census they're in England and then Scotland and then America. It just doesn't make sense. You just have to keep in mind that these are all really unlikely scenarios. Like, it's not impossible that somebody has a baby at 13, but it's really unlikely. And they certainly weren't getting married at that age in Australia or the UK or anywhere like that. And with the censuses, people just didn't travel around that much back then. It just wasn't common, that's all. So this one's kind of an appeal to common sense. If it doesn't sound right, then you're gonna wanna go and really check for some evidence. Big claims require big proof. Number 9, thou shalt pay it forward. So just as other members help you on your journey, you can help others on theirs. There'll be some stuff that other people can help you with, and there'll be other stuff that you'll be able to help them with. If we all did this kind of sharing, then we'd all really benefit in our research. I really think that what you put out there is going to come back to you. So if you're generous in helping other people, when it comes to it, then others will help you as well. Number 10, thou shalt remember thine objectives. Why did you begin your family tree in the first place? Was it just to get a bunch of names and dates, or was it to learn something about your ancestors and by extension maybe learn a little something about yourself and where you came from? So when you're racing through and adding hints like crazy, just try to remember to slow down, take a deep breath, and have a look at the personal stories that you're actually working on. Look at your ancestors' family, look at their location where they were living. You could look at the historical events that were happening at the time that might have been impacting them. Just remember that these are whole people, and it makes your journey so much richer to learn all about them. So while most of my commandments were about getting your facts straight and being respectful of others, this one is just a reminder that your tree is unique to you. It's special, so enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more. You can also check out our Patreon if you'd like to become a patron, and I'll hopefully see you in my next video. Bye!